Well, good morning, team. And I've been hearing some good things about these questions that you've been putting through to me as we did the questions from men in recovery. We did the questions from women in recovery. And here in this session, we're going to deal with the questions from partners. Of course, most of them would be women, but there are men partners as well, whose wife is trying to work through love addiction or sexual addiction as well. And so we're going to just go through a bunch of questions today. And the amazing thing about these questions is that there is such an opportunity for the person who's struggling, the addict, to really hear the hearts of the partners and really grow in empathy. It is such an opportunity to grow in empathy. And so my prayer is that you would learn, listen, learn, and go, oh my goodness, I wonder if my spouse has felt that. And that, instead of trying to, well, that's not mine. And, don't go that way. Go. I got to learn. I got to understand. Maybe even jot down some questions you want to ask your wife or your husband, if it's a female addict, to verify, is this what you're feeling as well? And the other thing I want to just say, this list of 23 questions I'm going to answer today, golly, it reflects an awful lot of hurt. And I really am sorry. I hurt for all the pain that's evidenced in these questions. And it's a hard thing where you have to recover from someone else's addiction, where you have to work through your own recovery because of something that you had no choice in. And it just feels unfair, and it's so hurtful. So my heart goes out to those that wrote the questions, and hopefully you find these helpful. I'm going to try to do a minute or so on each one, and a minute to 90 seconds would be my goal. So here goes the questions. Number one, why is just going to regroup and counseling not enough to make us feel safe and believe that there's change happening, there's anything changing? Well, the problem with just going to regroup and doing counseling, you see, if they're not being honest, if they're not serious about trying to learn, they can be going to regroup kind of to check a box to kind of get you off their back, as opposed to really learn. And so that's the regroup part. There are people, categorically, there are people that come to regroup for a while and say, oh, I got it figured out and all this, but they really never engaged. We can't force them to engage. We can't force them to be honest. We can't. So partners, we do our best to create an open environment where there's an opportunity to face stuff, be honest, admit things, and grow through things. And even on the counseling side, if they're not really open, if they're not willing to work, if they're not facing their stuff, a lot of times it's, I'll just try to get through the counseling and then she'll simmer down and then we'll be fine. But he's not really dealing with the issues. And so regroup and counseling may not be enough because it's a game. It's just going through the motions. Number two, what can we do as spouses, wives in this case, to support recovery? Okay, so pray, be a person of encouragement. Matter of fact, pray with your husband and pray for your husband. But encouraging and actually maintain a spirit of hope. Like I'm just looking forward to the day when you're free of this. I'm behind you. Do your best to treat with kindness. Now you're hurting, and so it's not easy because you want to react and you want to let things fly. And I believe you need to move towards forgiveness, because even if you were end up going to divorce him, to move towards forgiveness is what you need to do, because unforgiveness and resentment will just poison you. And so, and be careful too on this. You have boundaries sometimes that are needed. I accept that, but sometimes partners use boundaries as a punishment. And then it's actually like throwing darts back at your spouse, and be really careful there. And so those are some of the ideas of how you can support the person in recovery. How do we get our man to have empathy and ownership over the pain they have caused, besides reminding them and bringing it up? Well, you may want to listen to this together with your partner and talk about the answers Dr. Dave gave and why that was helpful to you and how you feel about that. That would be a really good chance to share empathy. But you see, when they come clean, and you see, empathy is a new concept. Addiction is all about selfishness. Addiction is all about me first, right? And it's hard to undo 10, 15 years of selfishness to all of a sudden be empathetic. And when they've been hiding and in shame and embarrassment over their addiction, to all of a sudden become a person who owns it openly, that's a big switch. And so to be selfless and to honestly own stuff is a big paradigm shift, because that's what they need to do, and it's not going to happen really easy. Question 4 is a little complicated because there's a key word that comes up here that I'll have to explain. But anyway, what do ReGroup guys and Dr. Dave recommend the women do, the spouses do, when the husbands are manipulating the recovery process? For example, they're bringing up a different version of reality to the group than's really happening at home. They're playing the role of, I'm a recovery rock star, but they're actually not, and they're gaslighting their wife, which is changing view of reality or actually lying about the truth. Darvoing their wife or spouse. Darvoing. This I got explained. Darvo. Darvo is an acrostic for deny, attack, reversed, become a victim, and then they actually, and it's the spouse that becomes the offender. So let me go. Darvo, D-A-R-V-O, is the acrostic for deny. They're in denial. They become defensive. So then they attack the spouse. They reverse it. Instead of me taking any blame, which he should have, he blames her, and he talks like he's a victim, like poor me. And it becomes that the spouse she's the offender now. And darvoing is another way of gaslighting. This actually came out with Dr. Jennifer Freyd in 1990, and it's been adopted by Dr. Sherry Kelfer in her book Intimate Deception. And so I mean, initially the word wasn't darvo was not a word that I'd run with, but actually I see it a lot, where immature, emotionally adolescent addicts are not good at accepting responsibility. So what do? They blame their spouse, they get defensive, and then they go, poor me, you don't understand how hard it is, and they do all this, and it's really self-absorbed. It's really all steeped in addiction. And what do? Things like this, time out. This is really not going in a good way. But I don't think it's important to talk any further, because I don't want to take any more blame. Wives could say that. Or can we have this discussion in front of somebody else? Let me write down your points, that I'm this, I'm that, and I did this, and I did that, and I did this. When I asked a question, why do you hide your phone when you come in the room, when I come in the room? Right. And so there's a lot of hypocrisy going on, a lot of denial, and an emotional adolescent there in the addict. Number 5, how do you handle your man claiming hundreds of days of sobriety that they and yet they should be resetting because they've done a lot of stuff to sniff the beer? Sniff the beer is like using the idea of alcohol. They're not really drinking, but they're smelling the beer, as it were. So she would saying that they're on the edge, they're compromising or so close to it, but they're not owning with the guys, and they're not resetting sobriety days. But they're telling how the guys think they're so awesome, and they play the victim, and they make her out to be this villain because she's questioning his days of sobriety. 2 things you got to talk through together: what it means to be all clear. Get the document that I've written, all clear, and what it means. And there has to be an agreement on all clear. And then there's another one called tightening the sieve. Listen to that together, because it talks about what purity is all about. And getting close and playing near the edge, and we need to be honest about recovery. And too often the addict, because he's not doing this anymore, and this anymore, and this anymore, and this anymore, that's good. But if he's still doing this, then it's still addict behavior, even though he's doing better. So he looks at the fact that he's doing better as is, good boy, Dave, good boy, you're doing so much better. Well, it is, but it's not done. I'm no longer shooting you with this gun as the as the addict. I'm no longer shooting you. I'm actually just I got a screwdriver and I'm stabbing you in the leg. I'm not shooting you. Gee, I used to shoot you. I'm not doing that anymore. I mean, like, and it's just harm in a different way. And so they they see it as improving. How do I love my husband through the triggers, both his and mine? First of all, when you are triggered as a partner, we have a set of guidelines, what to do when your spouse is triggered. And to be very fair, the closer the addict follows that, what to do when your spouse is triggered, the better they're going to be. So read that together and then share with him how that makes you feel. What points really are significant for you. And I would categorically talk through what happens when your spouse is triggered. But you have to also take responsibility for your triggers. I interestingly just talked to a partner just in the last 48 hours about this. And, they said sometimes when my husband does X, I get triggered and he doesn't understand it. I said, okay, but you got to take some responsibility too. Because let's just say every time my husband grabs a coffee, it reminds me of the fact that he went for coffee with this person. So every time he grabs a coffee, I say, well, okay, but like grabbing a coffee is a normal thing in life. And yes, it brings back memories that he went for coffee with this other person, which is hurtful. But you're going to have to learn to differentiate the fact between he's in the kitchen pouring you a coffee and making himself one. And you have to also have some resilience too, to say, I can't keep going there. Now, when you go there and get frustrated and he see what's up, and then you say, well, I went back to the whole coffee thing again. He needs to be gracious and say, I'm sorry. I'm the one that put that negative thought about the coffee in your heart. But the partner has to also be responsible that, because again, I can be grabbing a coffee every day and he's not trying to hurt you. I mean, because it's not about the coffee. It happens to be a reminder. That's what a trigger is. So there's mutual responsibility for the partner to be working on their stuff, to let go of those things. But there's really key responsibility for the addict to say, my issue, my bad. I'm the one that caused this. And so, yeah. Number 7, how do I help my husband through all this hard stuff? Well, I kind of answered that a little bit in number 2. I'll add a few more things. So beyond encouraging, and by the way, encouraging is not reminding, have you done your work this week? That's like, checking up on him. But just, it really, I saw you reading the other night. It really encourages me when you do. So thank you. Like that would be good. To offer hope that, like, I want to get through this with you. I want you to make it. And I don't want you to be shallow and you're making it, but I believe you can do it. And I'm praying for you. And the more that you can work to be less reactive, you see, your reactions, that's on you, right? Your reactions, that's on you. Because you see, even in your anger, which may be legitimate anger, scripture says, in your anger, do not sin. Well, when you get reactive and nasty and everything, you say, well, I have a right, I'm hurting. Okay. Talk about how you're hurting, but you don't have a right to start shooting back and causing hurts, right? So, so there's some of the ways that you can help your spouse through the hard stuff. One partner asks, will the past pain ever stop hurting? Well, it depends if the person is actually doing the work, because when they actually do the work and own it, it's like removing the bullet that was shot in your chest, right? I mean, the bullet's gone and caused a lot of pain, but if they don't remove the bullet and really own it, you're going to be hurting for a long time. Healing does take time. Many couples do make it. And, but you got to be careful. You've got to focus on the healing, not focus on the hurt. You see, if you focus on the hurt and you wake up every day, oh, I can't believe what I've been through, and you just rehearse that, and that's how you start your days, as opposed to, God, what do I need to do today to continue to become a person who's moving in the direction of my own healing and recovering, doing my part. And God, I trust you. I want to focus on a growth curve, not a grievance curve. And so work to focus on the healing, not on the hurt. And that might help. Number 9, why do I still doubt my husband's recovery, even though he is working so hard and actually doing the work? Well, first of all, this relationship had a crazy basis. It was a basis of lies. And so you're so betrayed because you didn't think that, you didn't know that. And when it all came out, you were aghast that this was going on for this long, and you'd asked him kind of because you felt suspicious, and he denied or she denied, and so there's this betrayal, and so it's not uncommon for the first response of the partner to be a response of doubt. Because how do you know what is true? Because you thought it was true, and you found out that all these things were lies, they were smoke and mirrors. And so it's not uncommon to have a default drive of doubt. Now, especially if you've asked direct questions and they were a really good liar. See, that's complicated. And so why do you still doubt? Because you have a default drive after betrayal that your first initial response is that the truth? So you have this response of doubt, and it'll take time before the rebuilding of trust. Betrayed, the rebuilding of trust is a great article for you to consider. Great question. Number 10, is recovery a series of choices, like choose to do the recovery work, choose to forgive, choose to move out of victim mode, or is it one big time choice? I'm going to kind of say both and, because initially it is one big choice that the addict has to make to say, that's it. I'm tired of being this. I want to change it for me. I want to be a different person. I want to be whole. I want to free myself. I want to seek into Jesus. I want to honor the Lord. I want to look in the mirror at night with respect. I want to honor my wife and my family. I want to be a person of integrity. So there is that decision. But it is a decision that is really a series of many subsequent choices to reaffirm the choices that I've made, to realign myself to the choices and the direction that would imply, to recommit to those choices. That reaffirming, realigning, recommitting to the direction is ongoing choices that the spouse needs to make to be a person of integrity, to walk with integrity, and never think that they're above the need to continue to realign their choices with what would really help them grow to become a person that is free. How do you, meaning an addict, how do these people see their spouses as the enemy? How do these men see their wives as the enemy? Well, first of all, it comes out of emotional adolescence, the tendency to blame and make excuses. Okay. And if you haven't listened to or read the article on emotional adolescence, the recovery talk on that, that would be a good one to do, because that will explain a lot of things. Sometimes the spouse being the enemy is part of the gaslighting thing, which is the blaming thing and reshaping reality to make it look that he's not so bad. But remember, sometimes the spouse is deemed as the enemy. It's based out of immaturity, but it's because they're the one that exposed me. They're the ones that caught me. They revealed my inadequacy, and I feel more guilt, more shame, more embarrassment. And if she just would have let things be, we would have been fine. No, that's a lie. But that's sometimes why you may be perceived as the enemy, partners, because you're the one that exposed him. You're the one that made him go through all this. No, he needs to be going through this. The addict needs to go through this to get the freedom to honor their wife. But because sometimes the messenger is the one that's shot, right? You get bad news in anger, they shoot the messenger. Well, nothing to the message. He just brought the message. He has nothing to do with it, right? And you brought the message. You caught him, exposed him, or asked him, and he's frustrated with this because his guilt, his shame, his embarrassment shoots high. And so that why some men will treat their spouses as an enemy. Do you think that wives are obligated to stay in the marriage? Short answer, no. Wise answer, I don't know, but in most cases, I think you need to give a shot to see if he or she can be serious about dealing with their addiction. Like if this is going to be more of the same, well, you're getting your answer. And you know, especially if the addict has acted outside the marriage and there's clearly you know, relational, physical, sexual grounds for divorce because of unfaithfulness, you say, well, I thought, isn't pornography unfaithfulness? Yes, it is. I'm just saying it's even clearer when they've acted outside the marriage. So you're not obliged to stay, but I would say, you know, a lot of things are going to blow up, and it's not because you consider leaving; it's because of the person and what they choices they made, the addiction that they made, and so the addiction that they were involved in, and so yeah, I mean. That's a Heinz 57 because each situation is a little bit different. But I would say that it's likely wise to see if there's going to be a genuine effort to work through things. And if there is, it might be worth trying to rebuild the marriage around a genuinely transformed partner, or sorry, spouse who is an addict, and that the partner would, you know, give them some time to see if they're going to actually work on things. What do we do to tell the kids if the marriage does not make it? Well, it's really important if the marriage does not make it and mom and dad are splitting up, that we say something about unfaithfulness. We may not give details of what it means. And of course, the younger they are, the more you have to be careful because they don't understand it. But it's not fair to the wounded partner to just say, well, mom and daddy are having differences and we're not getting along. I think a wise addict needs to own their stuff and say, listen, daddy was unfaithful to mom and he wasn't loving her well. And yeah, mommy's hurt pretty bad, you know, that type of deal. But you have to agree on the level of truth. If you start giving different stories to the kids, they're going to get really confused. And the greater amicability you can have for the sake of the kids, the better it's going to be. I do have a document, naturally. I do have a document called Telling Your Children on the Decision to Separate. I wrote that document for all the kids in this world whose parents are messed up because of sexual addiction and might not make it. And so that would be an article that you can get. Just request Telling the children on the decision to separate, and there would be a good place to start. Number 14, why is the 12-step program for the men not more encouraged in the men's group? That is something that's very important to be able to stay clean. Like, how come there aren't check-ins regarding that? Okay, so just a reminder that ReGroup is an anchor point to the week of the addict. It's an anchor point. It's let's keep going, and it's an encouragement point, and it's good teaching, and it's encouragement. And in the breakout groups, you know, 4 to 6 people in the breakout groups, part of the check-in is what step you're working on. Now, some men don't do that because they're not doing anything. But see, remember, this is a volunteer program. This is not like, though we're going to call each other to greatness, and these other men in the group are going to be challenging your husband to be honest, but you know, we don't know the truth. He may be saying, you know, these 2 things are what's going on, and there's 3 other things going on, and in the group we don't know that. I mean, there are people that are saying they're clean in the group. We don't know. I'm sorry. I wish, you know, okay, as you come through the entrance of this particular Zoom link, you will be assessed as to whether you're lying or not to the rest of the group. Well, we don't have that. And so if your husband is lying to you, he's likely lying to the guys in the group too. But just so you know, the 12-step program is part of our growth, because we realize that the recovery group is more of an anchor point of the week to keep them encouraged and going in the right direction, get good teaching, get support. But the 12-step program is what men need to be working through on their own on the side to do a lot of the work of healing. It's a parallel part of the program. It's a parallel part of the plan that the man does work on his own. And for all the people listening here this morning, it happens to be 30 or so men in recovery, being honest about where you're at in the 12-step program. I mean, one of the great leaders of this group has done a series of coaching men, a 15-minute video on each of the steps. Fabulous help. And so we're serious about it. But we don't cover it every week because this is designed to be an encouragement, because every man's in a different part, right? And so it's the 12-step program is a parallel program, and it is checked in every week. But again, we can't tell you whether or not your spouse is lying to us. Why do some men seem irritable and withdrawn after intimacy? And why do they seem to push you away the next day? Well, it might be because of intimacy and anorexia, because if you get physically close to somebody, especially if you're growing closer emotionally, remember, the intimacy anorexic wants to maintain distance, wants to keep you away, and he might feel, oh my goodness, she's going to get closer to me and I don't want that. So that's the intimacy anorexia. And so they shun closeness, and so they will do that. Sometimes it's a reminder of their own guilt. And that they struggled maybe in the intimacy with you of just going to goofy places and feel bad, and so they if they kind of push you away, then they don't have to be reminded of their own guilt and failure and just be able to love you well, especially if the intimacy doesn't go too well. Thirdly, sometimes it could be because of selfishness. They're so stuck on the addiction, it's hard for them to get out of that and actually to be present. And so there might be some comparison, or it's not the same, or they don't understand me. And it's just a lot of hard work. It's a way harder job to love a real person and to be intimate where it's mutual than it is for the PMO cycle, porn, masturbation, orgasm cycle, because it's all about me, it's all for me, it's all my timeline, and I don't have to really care for anybody else. So that is part of the challenge. 17, can you explain enmeshment as it relates to a wife intuitively sensing something is up with her husband and her husband not being able to communicate what he's feeling? Okay, so I just got to explain something here, because I think there's a misapplication of meaning here. Enmeshment is usually seen as an unhealthy thing. Enmeshment is that the partner is so mixed up into the addiction that she is somehow part of the addiction, and she's an extension of the addiction, and she doesn't even know it. And that's what enmeshment means, that I'm actually attached in an unhealthy way. But intuitively sensing something, a woman's intuition, where I don't feel good about this. I don't, this doesn't feel, I think he's lying to me. That is actually a healthy thing. And they've done some study in it was actually come out of Great Britain, that women's intuition is actually a real physiological, neurological gift. And it's called sequencing of events. And they can't tell you exactly why they have this weird feeling, doesn't feel good, but subconsciously there's a lining up of similar patterns, feelings, and behaviors that feel like the same before when I was betrayed. And so intuition is a good thing. Now, so when a wife is sensing something's up, the best you can do is ask. But remember, enmeshment is a negative thing where you're actually involved in the problem and maybe unaware. So I hope that helped. But remember, I got another question here. What is the link between sexual addiction and lack of empathy or understanding? Okay, so the greater the addiction, the greater the lying. What I usually believe and tell, for most people it's true, an addict is not just addicted to the porn, masturbation, orgasm cycle or the sexual addiction cycle, but it's also addicted to lying to cover for this behavior. And so the greater the addiction, the greater the amount of lying, usually to hide it, right? But the greater the addiction, the lesser the empathy. It's an inverse relationship. The greater the addiction, the least the empathy, because that is thinking about somebody else. There's a direct inverse relationship, a direct relationship between greater addiction, greater lying, a direct inverse relationship. The greater the addiction, the less the empathy. And so hopefully that is helpful to you. Number 18, my husband and I disagree about this, so we'd like you to weigh in. Can a husband lust after his spouse? I say he can, because porn, and she believes in this case here, lust in this definition is a negative thing. I say he can lust at her because porn can pervert the mind, and that can be transferred onto the wife, even if the husband is in recovery. But my husband says that sexual attention should be completely focused on the wife, and that isn't lust, it's biblical. What are your thoughts? Okay, so for definition, you have to decide whether or not lust is a strong sexual desire, or lust is tainted by a history of porn. And if lust is merely an unhealthy sexual distraction type of sexual draw, then lust is going to be used negative only. So we can use the word passion, a healthy sexual passion, a draw. See, so a strong sexual draw is what God gives us. Lust is when it's focused in a negative way, but the strong sexual draw could be directed to the partner, and it could be a healthy sexual passion. But you could be intimate with your spouse after coming out of recovery, and it still be unhealthy sexuality, because it still is an extension of the addiction. You see, and at first it will be unhealthy sexuality because the spouse is trying to get over their selfishness, because it's me-centered sex, it's fantasy-driven sex, it's all about me, and there are women partners who feel prostitutized in the relationship, in the bedroom, and that it's just about them. That's why I have this article, not done yet, but the difference between making love and having sex. And so in this case here, I want there to be a strong, healthy sexual passion that is other-centered and mutuality. That's where we're going. And if lust is going to always have the connotation of unhealthy and the negative, sinful side of sexual misalignment, then see it as a healthy, partner-centered passion that is present and not fantasizing, but present, eyes open, lights on, focusing on you, making love, not having sex. Number 19, one of my husband's struggles is looking at women and girls. When I point this out, he always says, no, he's not doing that. To me, he clearly is looking. My question is, should I say anything, or should I just not point it out? Well, just so you know, we talk about the second long look is inappropriate. It's one thing for me to be walking down a mall and I might see a pretty young woman coming towards me that's maybe dressed a little sketchy. She didn't have to be dressed sketchy, and I could notice her because she's pretty and has a nice figure or whatever. But for me to notice her is one thing. But for me to go, wow, and as she goes by, I'm gawking at her. I'm doing the second long look. You see, the second look is the inappropriate look, because now I'm volitional. To notice the woman in the mall is life. To notice, female partners, to notice a handsome man with a good physique and all, that's life. But to do the second long look, and again, go back to the all clear document to discuss what this looks like. You may want to have an adult discussion when you're not relating to some incident, like you just looked at that girl, and don't have an adult discussion right after something like that happens, because there's going to be defensiveness and denial and everything. Have an adult discussion about how should we handle where it appears sometimes that you're looking at somebody, and just ask, what can I do? To me, it looks like you are looking at them and taking a second look and all. And there is one, how do you know when you move from temptation to actually sin when it comes to this look? There's a podcast on that. A video teaching on that might be helpful to read. We're down to the last few here. What is the benefit of abstaining from sexuality or lovemaking for 3 months? Okay. And so keep in mind that there are many in the recovery world that feels that there needs to be a sexual reset, both for the addict and the partner. That this 3 months is saying we're going to have a new kind of intimacy moving forward. The spouse needs to feel safe and healthy and loved and so sometimes we got to move from making love to from having sex to making love. And so the reset is sometimes there, both for the addict to start to learn to be other-centered and it not to be just about them, and the partner to actually move towards separating the triggers from before and doubting whether they're enough and moving into a healthy way. And that sometimes takes some time. I'm not sure that I have advocated necessarily for the 3 months. What I do advocate for is whatever time it is felt that's needed. We do need to get over the fear of rekindling sexual intimacy, but doing it in a way that comes completely mutual, completely other-centered intimacy, and that's that kind of thing. Is it possible that some of my husband's sexual addiction behavior is because he's lost interest in me? If no, why not? Well, first of all, I just do not want any partner to somehow think that addict sexual behavior and their addiction is because of them. Most of the time, it clearly predated you. So be careful on hearing anything in that regard, because I put that qualifier in there. That being said, the more that they move into their addiction and the more it's on demand, the more it's all their sexual preferences are met, the more it's about them, that becomes a very self-centered thing. And some partners feel rejected because in their mind, well, maybe they're not enough. And some addicts actually are not interested in the sexuality in the spouse because they're not close to the person. One, because it's actually harder to make love to a real person than to just do your own thing. And so they actually may have lost interest because the addiction has taken over them. And so sometimes the addict is not very sexual with his spouse because the addiction has taken over so much. And sometimes they don't want to come back to a close relationship with their spouse because they may be an intimacy anorexic, or because it's just really hard and they're so used to doing what's easy. So there's some ideas there. Second last question, number 22. Why do you say that it takes 3 years for a difference to be made in recovery? Does that mean that my visuals and random things I've seen in my husband's SA things will go away? I'd like it to not be 3 years. It seems so long. Well, when I use, let me give you some background so we're all on the same page. I say it takes 18 months to 2 years for the addict to just quit the behavior. But it takes 2 to 3 years to deal with the causes behind the sexual addiction, the soul pain, the soul wounds. Now, some people can be shorter. That's why it's, 18 months to 2 years. Some may actually get there at 12, 14 months. They have really stopped the behavior. They're not acting out anymore. And it's not just knuckle holding, because I don't just want them to hold on and not do it anymore. I want them to deal with what's behind the addiction, the soul pain, the wounds, and their insecurities and everything behind it. That is harder to heal and to get freedom from than the actual stopping the addiction. Now, stop the addiction is mandatory, but we're going to remember, we got to stop the behavior and then address the causes for the behavior in the first place. Now, if you're a partner, I haven't said anything regarding how long it takes you to recover. Just understand what's behind why I've used the 3 years. And that's, it's 2 to 3 years, but some men are going to be less than that. Some partners are going to be less than that. Addicts are going to be less than that, whether they're male or female. The final question: do you have any examples or tips on managing boundaries and recovery with a person who is intimacy anorexia? He is an intimacy, she's an intimacy anorexic. So often my betrayal, when I have traumatized by another hurt, I want to pull away because of my fear or because I've been hurt and there's pain. But if I know that the IA really enjoys the distance, it's not helping us recover. So this is a real tricky one, right? Because when you react, you push away because you need to feel safer. Well, remember, the intimacy anorexic wants to maintain distance, emotional, spiritual, and sexual distance, because they've been hurt in their own past and they got to deal with those soul wounds, but they want to keep you at a distance. And so when you are sexual with a person and actually present, there's an emotional connection that's starting to happen that scares the intimacy anorexic to death. And so they'll often maybe pull away or want to pull away. So when you walk away as a partner who's working through something, they're kind of okay with that because they want distance. So the SA, sexual addiction, and the IA, intimacy anorexic, is a doubly hurtful, complicated recovery. And so what I would suggest, if there is some reactions of pulling away, rather than creating a distance, even though you might need some time, it's better to say, what I need from you right now is I need your kindness. I need us to go for a walk. I need to sit facing you and I need to talk to you. We need to maybe watch a recovery video together, but do that together. I need a good attitude from you, because when I'm hurt because of betrayal and I pull away, the partner, and the addict goes, okay, there's good distance. It's on her. She's pulling away. It's not me. Okay. You got to be careful that you don't feed into it, but also have boundaries where you feel safe. Yeah. So you likely want to work that through with a sexual addiction and intimacy anorexic counselor to work that through. These questions are unbelievably profound, showing a massive amount of hurt and pain. And so I hope, partners, you feel honored by the effort that we put to help you feel understood. I know that the people listening who are addicts have so much to learn by hearing your questions and, embracing the answers. I mean, these are not perfect answers, but these are good and experienced and educated answers, but they're not perfect. They're not everything. And but the direction, from every question, you're going to be able to get the best 3 steps of how to go move ahead in recovery as a couple, hopefully with those answers. So thank you. And let's go to some discussion right now.